it probably does make sense to go ahead and put the agenda slide up and get started, and folks can, as more and more people gather, we will let them in. But I do just want to welcome everyone on behalf of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, the Employment and Human Services Department of Contra Costa County, as well as the Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board. We've been working collaboratively on the Contra Costa County Equitable Economic Recovery Task Force, and want to welcome you to today's convening. We've been working since the summer together collaboratively to try to help build back a more sustainable and certainly more equitable economy for our county. And there, as everyone in this room knows very well, there has been multiple pandemics, multiple crises spanning from the COVID-19 public health pandemic, such a negative impact that disproportionately has fallen upon our low-income residents and our communities of color in Contra Costa County. And so what we've been trying to do through this task force is to focus on actions that we can take to help make sure that relief gets where it needs to, and that and one of the most important things based on all the research and our conversations is getting displaced workers, who through no fault of their own find themselves without a job, getting folks connected to new opportunities. And so we have some terrific nonprofit partners that are here today and have a great convening planned. So just want to thank everyone for making the time. And also, again, thank our partners at the county for doing this. So what we're going to be doing today is hearing a welcome from the chair of the Contra Costa Board of Supervisors, Diane Burgis, who has certainly made economic development an incredibly important part of her leadership as chair of the board this year, for which I am grateful. I speak about it publicly, and so thank you very much, Supervisor Burgis, for being here. We'll have some chance to put some questions in the chat, and I'll go ahead if there are any questions for the supervisor after she gives her brief remarks. What we're going to do then is have some breakout rooms where you're going to have an opportunity to learn about innovative work-based learning programs. You'll have 3 different options to go deep about some of the best nonprofit providers around. And we'll explain a little bit more about that when we get there. And unlike most online things, we have a break. Yes, we will have a break built into the day. We will be playing music if you want to stick around and listen to it, but it also gives you a chance to get up and stretch your legs. So then for the second part of our work today, we're going to be doing a panel discussion that I'm looking forward to moderating about what can be done to increase access to work-based learning in Contra Costa. Got a terrific panel that is going to be sharing some of their expertise, and we actually do anticipate concluding at about 11:45 today. So that's our plan in terms of walking through everything, and wanted to just make sure that you had a sense of that. We're still admitting folks to the event right now, but I think it is time to go ahead and welcome Diane Burgis, who is serving as the chair of the Board of Supervisors this year. Many of you know Supervisor Burgis and can appreciate that she has been working tirelessly since she got elected to make sure that we're talking about jobs in terms of representing a place where housing it shouldn't just all be just about housing. We need to have great jobs here too, to improve the quality of life and really unleash the equitable opportunities that are available. And Supervisor Burgis was talking about that long before the COVID-19 pandemic started to impact our communities. So, so again, if you have any questions for Supervisor Burgis, go ahead and hold those, but you can put them in the chat. And if we have some time, we'll try to get those answered. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Supervisor Burgis.
Thank you, Kristen. Oh, okay. So I thought I was muted. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for the warm welcome. I am so happy to see the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, Contra Costa Employment and Human Services Department, Contra Costa Workforce Development Board, standing up for Contra Costa Equitable Recovery for All Task Force. I had to read that because it's a mouthful. And as Kristen said, I've been thinking about economic development way before COVID, but COVID has really put a light on the challenges for folks. And, I just was thinking about the fact that when I moved out to East Contra Costa as a single mom, recently divorced with three kids under 11, let's see, it would be almost 18 years ago, I think, could be 17, but somewhere around there. And I had to set up a house for three kids, one with special needs, and I had to make choices. Either I could commute and commit to 3 hours, 2 hours of being on the road, and also being further away from my kids. The amount of cost that would be to do that, the amount of childcare that I would have to spend. And then, later on, as I kind of thought about it, the environmental impacts of having a car out there and not being close. The other part of it is I knew that that would be stressful. So how present would I be with my kids? And how often would I be able to maybe even have time for myself to volunteer or do hobbies or exercise? So when I kind of became an elected person, I realized that that was something that I could try to fix for a lot of people. I want people to be able to not have to think about a long commute or, whether to trade a low income job that doesn't have benefits for a job that does have benefits, but I have to put all that time, money, and mental health into it. I don't want Contra Costans to have to make that choice. I want them to have more choices. I want them to feel that their job is just a part of their life rather than all of their life, and then everything else is the extra. So the work that you're doing is so important because there's a lot of folks that don't have choices, and that's really what this is all about, is rather than just taking what you can get, but maybe thinking on a higher level of being able to have a better job, have benefits, have economic choices, be able to be there for your family. So I think Contra Costa County is positioned very well to take the lemons of 2020 that my friend John Kopchak said and turn it into the lemonade of 2021. I just thought that was a really nice framing for all of us. And we have so much going for us. Geographically, we are, right in the middle of the Northern California region. Matter of fact, we've trademarked that. We're the capital of the Northern California mega region. And so we have a workforce that is already, there's a workforce that's established that's already ready to do a lot of different things. And we have an infrastructure system that's ready to train people that aren't quite ready to do that. And so, we are ready for that. Also, with the thing that's going on with COVID and people spreading, that opens up opportunities for people to work remotely if that's the opportunity that they want to take. We see emerging technologies coming into Contra Costa County. We see refineries transitioning into cleaner technology energies. And so we have you all too, a system that's ready to nurture these changes to our advantage. We did our board retreat. Beacon Economics came in and did their predictions, and they said that we're not in a great recession situation, and that they think we will experience a rapid recovery, but it's just not likely to be until the third or fourth quarter of this year. And I think that's all dependent on how these vaccines get rolled out. I just was looking at the numbers yesterday. Contra Costa has already vaccinated over 21% of people 16 and over. And even with limited supply, we are doing it. And, we're not, bells and whistles going on the news all the time talking about our effort, but we have the staff that's going in and getting it done. We have partners like John Muir and even Kaiser, even though they're getting beat up, everybody's doing their part and trying to do their part to get this done. And then just today, I read that the Johnson and Johnson single dose vaccine will be coming out. And so we do see a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm always someone that looks forward and not backwards. So I'm very optimistic. Um, Unfortunately, while down from the 13% over the summer, we still have 7.9% unemployment. And with the stay-at-home orders, it makes it really hard for small businesses to open up. So we're going to work really hard to, get this, get people vaccinated and get the positivity rate down. The county, the task force, and each of the work-based learning, apprenticeship, and career opportunity programs participating today continue to look at ways to assist people who have been displaced due to the pandemic or due to the ever-changing landscape. And I'm so happy to see these partnerships. I'm so happy to put all of these things out in the light and to think about ways to take action. And so I ask that you include me and my office and my colleagues in that effort. And I know that you know that I am all about it. So I want to thank all of you for stepping up, thinking about this, bringing your gifts, committing yourself to a career that does this very important work. And I look forward to hearing your questions. I hope they're nice. It's only 9.
Well, by definition, they're going to be nice, Diane. Absolutely. No. So,
only 9:15. I can only.
So thank you. Thank you for those remarks. I always do appreciate that you do look forward, that you do so with very, I think, realistic ideas about what's happening. So thank you for that vaccine update. I don't think very many people appreciate just how good Contra Costa is doing with limited supply. And so hopefully with that supply increasing significantly, we can do some meaningful things. So just as a reminder to anyone participating, if you do have a question for Supervisor Burgis, please put that in the chat. I'll keep an eye on that. But actually, just to follow up on a couple things, Supervisor Burgis. So we are at this moment where 2 counties in the Bay Area did just move to the red tier, right? And so you have reporters reporting from indoor restaurants in Marin and San Mateo. And so, and then right with my hat as an elected school board member, right, desperate for the red tier because that's when we can open middle schools and high schools. And so are things trending in the right direction? And do you see Contra Costa being able to join that parade? Or do you have any comments about when we might be moving to that next bit of flexibility?
So I think if you've been following this, you're aware of the fact that everything is constantly changing.
It is. The goalposts just keep moving.
Right. It's also the thing that changes is who's making the decision for what specific thing you're talking about. So when we're talking about schools opening and going into the next tier, a lot of those things have kind of been taken out of our hands. Mm-hmm. So as far as what we can control is we can help certain people get vaccinated. And so the Board of Supervisors, I think it was in November, sent a resolution to the governor asking him to put teachers up there in the higher tiers so that they could get vaccinated early so we could open up schools. I think Governor Newsom announced last week that 10% of vaccines are now going to go to teachers. I wouldn't be surprised if, using the parameters of the colors of tiers, if we are able to vaccinate and schools are ready to open, I wouldn't be surprised if the governor changes the rules there. But as the rules are set now, I think I think we're still at like, I don't remember what the number was. I want to say 14 or 13, and we need to go to 7. Um, and so we are moving in the right direction. The variables are us sticking to the masking and physical distancing and all of that, and also these new variants. As long as they don't, there's some people that are concerned that it could create a new surge. So if we don't see those things, I see us, moving in the into the red to really soon, hopefully. But my crystal ball is just not that accurate right now.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you talking about the changes that have happened, which is part of what makes it hard to run a business and to operate in this environment. And I was just on a briefing earlier this morning from the Biden administration about the America Rescue Plan, about the aspects that are set to help small business should that rescue plan pass. And so, and they highlighted that, again, within just the segment of restaurants and bars, there were 400,000 jobs lost in December alone on that point. And so just there's so many segments that are struggling. But and all the things that you mentioned about things that you had to think about and the importance of increasing choices around childcare and time away from your kids and thinking about all those things that people have to navigate. That is what we're diving into in this task force and thinking about how we can and what we've heard from impacted entrepreneurs and impacted workers is how frustrating it is to not have those choices and to have very few choices and to be in this pandemic where you had to continue to work and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Make a choice between continuing to work and earn money, but also putting yourself at risk. And what a terrible choice that was, and that fell disproportionately on our low-income residents. So, people are being shy. I don't know if they haven't had their caffeine. So there are 0 questions in the chat.
Okay, it's 9:19. I can take even mean questions if you want. That's where you're gonna go. Okay.
So I do think that I do appreciate just your focus on how we can be supporting the economy and what you can do as an elected official to increase the choices that people have. I think is just really helpful. So we will keep you as a partner in this work, and we'll certainly keep your terrific staff update and keep you briefed about what we're doing. And I can't say enough good things about our partners. Fudu and Tamina Alon from HSD and the Workforce Development Board, and Maura Connell and the whole team that's working with us from the county.
And I need to do a shout out because I have my communications director, Teresa Geringer, on here, and she's a superstar, and she's keeping an eye on everything for me as well.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we're grateful for Teresa there. All right. Well, if I know that you're pulling double duty today because Keith Archuleta, who's an active member of our task force here, has also been a key player in convening an important discussion that I'll be participating in later today with Policy Link on a great report that they're doing.
But isn't it great? We're talking about it, and we're
acting,
and we're coming up with an action plan, and this is the right time. So I'm excited that we're all doing that today.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Supervisor Burgis.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. So as I mentioned at the top, what we're going to be doing now is going ahead and going into some breakout rooms. And so the way it's going to work is that each of you will be placed into a breakout room to learn about a program of your choice. And we have 3 choices. And so they're up here. So there's room number 1, features Opportunity Junction. You're seeing a description up here. We have some amazing staff from Opportunity Junction here. So, it says here, Opportunity Junction helps low-income Contra Costa residents get and keep good jobs by providing training, support, experience, and employer introductions. And one fun fact is Opportunity Junction was born out of the technology task force of the then Contra Costa Council, which is a predecessor to the East Bay Leadership Council. Room number 2 is going to feature PathStream. PathStream partners with leading technology companies to build branded digital skills career programs, including a Facebook digital marketing certificate and an Asana project management certificate. So if you want to focus on those digital opportunities, go to room 2. Room 3 is going to be highlighting the terrific work of Jewish Vocational Services. JVS transforms lives by helping people build in-demand skills and find good jobs. Their skills training programs include dental and medical assistance, public utilities, and Salesforce administrator and data analyst training. And so these are really in-demand opportunities. And so I just really want to give a shout out to Lindy Lavender, who coordinated and made this possible to hear from these three terrific organizations. And so the way this is going to work is that if you do not have a preference, and we will place you in a room at random, but if you do have a preference, what we want you to do is to please change your name in Zoom to have the room number you desire in front of your name. And Mark and Lindy are going to do this to demonstrate. So what you do is you go to the 3 dots that are on the top right of your own Zoom box. And what you do is you go ahead and you can select, you press on that. And what you do is you have the option to rename yourself. So instead of being Kristen Connolly, I would say I'm 3 Kristen Connolly. And all of a sudden, and by doing that, what you're going to be doing is giving us a signal about which room to assign you to. So just take a minute and think about which room might be your preference. And there's no wrong answer. Our providers are amazing. And so, and again, if you don't put a preference down, we'll go ahead and randomly assign you. And again, if you have trouble, put that in the chat. And thank you, Leslie Choi. You can also right click and choose rename. So since all of us have been on 1,000 Zooms now. So anyway, so we're going to go ahead and start to place folks in their breakout rooms. And so, and then what we're going to do is be in those breakout rooms until 10. So we're going to open the breakout rooms at 9:30. Actually, if maybe we'll open them sooner, but we're going to keep those breakout rooms open until 10:25, which will really give each of you an opportunity to hear from the providers and then just dive in deep about what your questions are and how you might be, what you can learn from each of them. So I think it'll really lead to a robust discussion. So then we're going to bring everybody back at 10:25 and then have a little break between 10:30 and 10:45, and then we'll begin our panel. So are there anybody, you can go ahead and put in the chat if you have any questions or concerns about how any of this is working. We didn't want to be rushed. We wanted to give everybody plenty of time. Lindy, how's the breakout room assigning going? Okay, cool. It seems like folks have changed their names and made their preferences. So that's excellent.
They should all be open, and hopefully you're getting a notification now.
Okay, everybody, as we begin to gather, I did just want to thank the 3 organizations again that presented and really appreciate your willingness to share the great work that you're doing. And I know one of the things that I asked Elizabeth from JBS was, if you were all powerful and could change something, and she had a really good answer about some of the barriers that exist to apprenticeship, and we should work to fix those. So I just really appreciate everyone's expertise and willing to dive into that. So really, thank you so much. So what we're going to do right now is, if anyone has a hot burning thing that they want to report out as like the very best thing that happened to them in their breakout room, I took pages and pages of notes. We can go ahead and you can put that in the chat and we can acknowledge it. But I did want to just take a minute to talk about what the rest of the convening looks like. And so, we did have we did have those great sessions with the three organizations. And so I just want to let you know that we're going to have, we will have any of the provided presentations and materials on the CCEP website, right, which is ccpartnership.org. We put them in our, there's a task force page. So you can go to ccpartnership.org/task force. That's where those things will live. We're going to ask that all of you return. You can just turn off your camera. You can mute yourself, go about your business. We're going to take a break, actual break. Come down the hall, do whatever you need to do, 15 squats, whatever it is that you do to keep yourself going in this world. But we're going to have a panel discussion with DC Carol Durham Kelly from Rubicon, Gina Del Carlo from Earn and Learn, and Adele Burns from the Bay Area Community College Consortium, starting at 10:45. I get the privilege of moderating that discussion. And what we're hoping to dive into are really deep issues around how to have meaningful work-based learning experiences, and hear about and to talk about what employers might do better and differently, and what we can learn from each other to really think about how this important piece fits into the overall economic recovery. So there's a lot of great wisdom with our three panelists, and I'm looking forward to diving in deep with them. So are there any questions for the good of the order, or any, I don't see anything in the chat. So I think what we will do is go ahead and cue up our break, and we will see you back here at 10, try to be back at 44. We can start on time. You can enjoy the music. And so I look forward to it. So thanks so much. We are excited about the panel that we're about to launch into, and just want to thank our panelists and thank our participants for attending. We really look forward to this discussion this afternoon. So what we're going to do is go ahead and I'm going to do some introductions of our panelists, and then we will dive in. So again, for those of you who are just joining, my name is Kristen Connolly. I'm the Executive Director of the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, and this is the second part of our half-day convening that we are leading through our work with the Contra Costa Equitable Economic Recovery Task Force. We're here in partnership with the Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board and Contra Costa's Employment and Human Services Department, EHSD. That is working collaboratively to support this work. So I want to thank the task force members and thank everybody for being here. So what we're going to do today is have a panel. So I'm going to introduce our three panelists, and just grateful for their expertise. So we'll dive in. So first we have Adele Burns, who has spent her career in workforce development and economic empowerment. She's worked on these important issues from many angles, including government policy work, working in the tech startup space, and also leading both strategy and operations for Year Up Bay Area, and which is considered the most effective workforce development program ever measured in the United States. Today, she's joining us as the new Regional Director of Apprenticeship for the Bay Area Community College Consortium, where she's both assisting the educational systems in the Bay Area to expand apprenticeships, and also representing the Bay region in statewide conversation about the future of apprenticeship. So thank you, Adele, for being here. Gina Del Carlo is the founding director of Earn and Learn. Earn and Learn partners with schools, employers, and communities to effectively scale work-based learning experiences for all learners. Gina worked for several years in varying positions, most recently as the youth program manager with Contra Costa County Workforce Development Board, prior to taking workforce, the Earn and Learn campaign out of the Workforce Board to where it currently sits, which is at the Contra Costa Economic Partnership. And so excited that Gina can be here. And looking forward to all that she's going to contribute. DC Carol Durham Kelly Dr. Carol Durham-Kelly is our third panelist. She joined Rubicon Programs in 2016 and became CEO in November 2020. So one of those folks doing a major job change in the amidst the pandemic. Prior to joining Rubicon, Dr. Durham-Kelly spent over 10 years providing therapy, mentoring, and directing programs in community-based programs. I will note that we did not get an official biography from DC, so I would encourage DC to elaborate on all of her extensive background so that we know more about all the great background that she brings to this. So, so without further ado, we're gonna jump into our panel. So, so I wanted to again thank you all for being here. Just gonna ask that folks put any questions that you have in the chat. I don't want to interrupt the flow, but I'm gonna moderate this panel discussion. And so just wanted to kick off the panel by just getting your sense about, you know, how can we encourage, you know, because our context here is taking action. We want to take action to help the recovery, help it be meaningful, help us deal with everything that's happening. So how can we encourage community members to take advantage of work-based learning opportunities? And what have you found to be the most effective way to spread the word about new programs? And so I guess I'll go ahead and, so I want all three of you to tackle that question if you would, and I will go ahead and I will impose on DC first. Would you mind going first, DC?
That's fine. Something told me you were coming this way first. All good. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As Kristen said, my name is DC Durham-Kelly, and really humbled to be invited to this panel with Gina and with Adele, and really want to lift up that I do feel gratefully and fortunately positioned to lift up the experience of the job seeker or the access seeker. Rubicon Programs, over 47 years old. We have definitely done much work with folks looking to access opportunities, and probably lighter on the side of engaging the employers, although we do that also, but I will lift up that I think our strength is really about preparing job seeker or the access seeker. And so this is a great question that I'm going to center around my experience of working with those folks in our communities who are trying to overcome barriers or navigate the map, if you will, to the various opportunities. So one thing that I'll lift up is clarity, right? Oftentimes it is the staff, the coach, or the case manager's job to present a clear opportunity. What is the motivation, or what is the carrot, if you will? Why? Why should I explore this opportunity that you're presenting in front of me over another opportunity, right? And so clarity around the benefits to the access seeker, right? I was really enthralled in the path stream presentation this morning and really noted the intentional marketing around co-branding, right? Co-branding and university partnership. And for some communities, that's the carrot, right? And so that led me to think about, well, what is the carrot for the communities that I'm working with? Because it's not necessarily the prestige of the university. It is the immediate stability and the income, right? So what is the short-term and long-term benefit of work-based learning packaged in a way that's motivating our community to go for it, right? So I would say clarity of information, being intentional about how it's branded, right? And oftentimes for the communities that I work in, the branding, the most important central message is really about immediate income, right? Because you have folks that are trying to survive today. And so this idea around attaching stipends to work-based learning is critical so that folks can explore training and work-based learning opportunities, but also not forego immediate income. And then also long-term connections, right? So my experience has been, you might be successful convincing someone that an opportunity is right for them right now, but it feels just that, like right now opportunity. And so it's really hard to sell. What happens after that? What happens after the 16 weeks that I complete this phase of my journey? Am I going to get a job? Can you guarantee that I'm going to get a job that is higher paying? And oftentimes, oh, that's a soft sell. Like, we're not often in positions where we can guarantee you're going to get a placement. That's not where we're positioned to say or to do. And that has an impact on access seekers readiness and willingness to take a work-based learning opportunity over an immediate job, even if it's a lower paying job, because it's meeting an immediate need. So clarity, pathways, and some sense of guarantee to the next step. And I think that that's important for the access seeker, but also the employer. Because the reality is sometimes the products that we have to support employers who are offering, let's just say, on-the-job training as one type of package, they're also looking for short-term solutions. They have an immediate staff need, and they're going to receive your offering of on-the-job training to meet their immediate need with really no vision on how I can incorporate this entry-level employee or this trainee into my staff structure, even though they have to say they do. Check the box. Yes, I'm going to commit to finding opportunities for this person to move through the organization. So from the employee access seeker perspective, I would just summarize and lift up the necessity for clarity, the necessity for income and wages, and the necessity for connection between post-training or post-workplace learning steps. And I'll pause there.
Yeah, no, that's a great starting point for this discussion, and really appreciate you highlighting those three concepts. So I want to go to Gina next, and just to go ahead and I'll give you the question again. How can we encourage community members to take advantage of work-based learning opportunities? And what have you found to be the most effective way to spread the word about new programs?
Sure, thanks. And I second everything DC said. That was all really good information. I would also say that it needs to be sequential. Participants and job seekers and learners need to be exposed and pique their interest before they can have any idea of what the possibilities are. We all know, we are workforce people. We know that opportunities, the good opportunities, the best opportunities go to people who are already connected. So for us, it's how do we provide equitable access to all of the opportunities along the entire continuum. I think we'd all agree that both our education and employment systems routinely underserve people who are most marginalized, and they're kind of locked out from these opportunities. And it's work-based learning is a huge lever for economic mobility. So how do we scale work-based learning so there's enough for everyone? And together with the Workforce Development Board and Economic Partnership, Earn and Learn makes it easy for employers to engage. I think that employers will do more if we make it easy for them. If there's one place where they can go, a recognized point of contact where they don't have to constantly be answering cold calls. Employers don't want to engage when they're being cold called. They want to have us tracking what they're doing, measuring what they're doing, and they want to know what their impact is in the community. Are we moving the needle? Where are we? Where is a big company doing work-based learning? And more importantly, where are they not? And then they can strategically outreach to their employees to reach those harder to serve areas. So I think it's really all about making it easy for employers, but also easy for participants. Earn and Learn has partnered with community colleges and K-12 education systems to do virtual work-based learning, because that's really accessible to a lot of people. We record them, so if people cannot attend live, they can check them out on our library. And we specifically do outreach to people in the community who are local talent, who are reflective of the population we're trying to reach. And we do an informal guest speaker virtually that we call it Ask Me Anything, where we have grandparents attend and parents and dislocated workers and fifth graders who we prep the guest speaker and say, they're going to ask you, the first question is, how much money do you make? You have to be okay with that. They need to know how much money you make. And they need to know that you maybe didn't have a linear path. Talk about the bumpy spots in your road. And we do that with local talent that graduated from these local high schools, or maybe didn't graduate from the local high schools. And participants need to see themselves in these people, and they need to have someone rooting for them and someone telling them, like, I was like you. and you can be this. So I think that's kind of what I have to say about that, is opening up access and thinking about equity. Like, internships should never be unpaid. That is a huge problem.
Yep.
And you know, just feeds into the connected people getting more and better opportunities, because the disconnected participants don't have the opportunity to do an unpaid internship.
Right. Right. No, that's such a great point. And it's worth saying again that internships should never be unpaid. So I think it's just worth repeating, and then building on the point about clarity and income, and you know, and that EC started us off with. So and I'm excited to talk about this huge lever that is work-based learning. So Adele, I want to bring you in the conversation. You know, building on this idea of, you know, how can we encourage community members to take advantage of work-based learning opportunities, and what you've found to be the most effective way to spread the word about new programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this sequenced beautifully, because I couldn't agree more with all of the things that that both DC and Gina have said. And it tees up perfectly to one of the focus areas of my current role, which is apprenticeships. Now, I won't only harp on about apprenticeships, because I think I want to also answer the question partly wearing my former hat lens of Year Up and what I learned in the outreach there. But I do just want to take a moment to pitch the concept of apprenticeship for folks to be thinking about, because really, in the spectrum of work-based learning, which there is a broad spectrum, and this morning we got to hear from various cool programs doing bits of this, apprenticeships is it's the full distance. It's the gold standard of workforce development, because from day one, an apprentice is earning a full-time wage while they're learning on the job and getting classroom training that supplements that. And to me, in an ideal world, is also getting some sort of wraparound services from, say, a workforce development board or a nonprofit that's supporting the whole person. Because when you have all of those pieces coming together in an apprenticeship program, it creates an incredibly equitable path into a career, right? So it's creating an opportunity for somebody to be not just getting a stipend, but getting a full living wage. And so I'm doing a lot of work with our whole education system to try to do more to expand apprenticeships, because it's a mechanism that has been very well established and used in the building and fire trades. But there is nothing to stop us from expanding it to any and all professions, to the entry level point of any and all professions. I was brainstorming with one of the panels this morning about hey, could a certified nursing assistant role be made into an apprenticeship? So to the extent that you're working on these programs, if you can take it that full distance to turning it into an apprenticeship, so that you're getting somebody into a job, into earning as immediately as possible, that is amazing when you can make all those pieces come together, because it just changes the equation for the job seeker, right? They don't have to forego wages in order to do training. They can be earning and learning. So I think it's an excellent mechanism that I would encourage folks to consider in their own programs that they're doing. Now, to come back to the question of what's the best way to reach out to folks, I echo everything that's been said. I will say that my learnings of best practices around this definitely come from my experience working with Year Up, which is a workforce development program. It's a year-long program, 6 months of education, often in partnership with a community college, and then 6 months of internship. And one of the really cool things about Year Up is that it pays a stipend for that full year. And that is awesome. While I was there, I was it's not enough. I learned about apprenticeship and I was this is the full distance. But I love what Year Up does, and it's a fantastic program. And in terms of outreach there, what I saw was incredibly effective in the outreach is significant investment in social media marketing. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir here, perhaps all of you are already doing this, but it is how you reach folks today. I mean, it's been true for years, and it couldn't be more true right now, that you have to have a robust social media strategy if you're trying to reach job seekers. And I think representation in the images that you put forth in your social media strategy is also really important. And you know, the videos, the pictures, they need to be representing the folks that you're trying to reach out to. So I think that that's really relevant. I also think a lot has been leveraged in terms of like partnerships with other nonprofits and community-based organizations that are supporting the similar population that you're trying to serve. I think there's a lot, you know, that's what today is a lot about, is about learning about these other entities and building connections. But I think that's really important. The other thing, which is just huge, is leveraging your graduates, right? Like the folks who have gone through your program are going to be your greatest advocates for the next folks to come into your program. So don't, you know, use your information systems well so that you're gathering those contact lists of your graduates and inviting your graduates into information sessions, and you're pushing recruitment material out to them. Like, I know they've already been in the program, but the point is that their brother or cousin or neighbor has maybe not been in the program and could really benefit from it. So I would say those are some of the strategies that I observed at Year Up that were really effective.
Great, thanks, Adele. I know, DC, you wanted to get back in here and build on something that Adele just said.
Something that Adele and Gina mentioned that really spoke to me that I wanted to lift was this concept of non-linear progression, right? I think that much of our training is rooted in the tradition of that prototype of a student who knows what they want to do after high school, they commit to a major, and then they progress. And the reality is that's not really the world that most of us live in. So this idea of normalizing the non-linear path and ideas of work-based learning or internships as exploratory. So I know this kind of flies in the face of what I said earlier about having a long-term vision and being able to convey to an access seeker what comes next. But I also think some normalcy around exploring and maybe achieving that through partnerships, like a partnership cluster of opportunities or a cluster of exposures, and normalizing people moving from different experiences, as opposed to the narrative of failure. If you get into a placement, that's not for you, right? There's so much, that narrative around failure makes a CBO hesitant to place someone, because then we're going to be judged on if that person completed or not, right? And so if we can add to the narrative where the normalcy around exploring opportunities, short-term opportunities through clusters, I think that will also increase access and a willingness to give people a chance, right? To have access and explore different opportunities. So I just want to add that, because Adele and Gina made me think about that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I know I'm mentoring a young person who just changed her major and is needing a little support behind that in a new way. Like, she's like, I thought I was going to do this and now I need to do this. And so, and that's true of folks who are not in the college setting as well and not on a path. We need to think about how to help folks pivot and deal with the non-linear progression. So I think that this next question will go to Gina first. So, you know, right, economists are predicting that some jobs lost during the pandemic aren't coming back. We hear it a lot about the trends that have accelerated around automation, and then certainly the trends that have impacted retail and really moving a lot of brick and mortar retail being replaced by online in a new way. But how are you working with the business community and the employers in your universe to learn of their new future landscape and their workforce needs? You know, we hear so much about how such a significant chunk of jobs of the future aren't created yet. And so how can we be supporting these systems and doing work-based learning opportunities in that context? So what are you doing to make sure you've got your finger on the pulse?
Yeah, we're having a lot of conversations with employers from large companies. One example I can talk about is Alaska Airlines. We did outreach and found a captain of the airline who graduated here locally and outreached to us and said, my company needs help. We do not have a local and diverse talent pool. And we don't know how to create that. We're not the experts in that work. Can you help us? And so we did a lot of brainstorming and thought partnership with him about what can that look like. We found that there are, in Concord at Buchanan Airport, there's free exploratory flying lessons for young people. So that's so important for people to hear from a guest speaker and hear about, oh, I'm so interested. Well, maybe get up in a plane and make sure, because maybe you are, or maybe you're not.
Maybe you get air sick. You don't know.
Exactly. One of my favorites was, I think it was one of Alejandra Chamberlain's youth with County Office of Ed, where he thought he wanted to be a firefighter. So we went out on a call and it was a car accident and he turned white and went back into the fire truck and was like, oh my God, never, no, I don't like blood. So, I mean, it's like what DC was saying. It's just as important to say, oh, I tried it and I didn't like it. Let's try something else, rather than commit to something because you think you want to do it. So I'd say lots of conversations, employees say, doing the sequence with us, starting out as a guest speaker and then moving on to maybe a mentor, doing a job shadow. And then what's next? We said, can a group of young people go and fly in your simulator? And he was like, I think so. Let me check. But employers need for intermediaries and other organizations to handhold, to make it easy for them to engage. They don't want to mentor a young person without an intermediary in the middle setting it up. They're not going to connect with these young people without us creating the space for that and the boundaries and the tools. So that's what I would say is, listening to employers. There are job shortages all over the place. There's a huge job shortage, like I said, with pilots right now, but we don't have that information unless we hear from them. And then creating a program with Alaska Airlines saying, what are you willing to invest in this?
Mm-hmm.
Can you contribute some funding to your future workforce? And they're like, oh yeah, we could take that out of our marketing budget. But, really having conversations and identifying the champions within the organizations who are willing to co-create things with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's great. And part of it is just your experience and building more experience and more trust with more employers. And so, everything builds on each piece. So that's so important. So, Adele, did you want to jump in there and add in terms of like how, you just transitioned to the Bay Area Community College Consortium around apprenticeships. So how are you learning from and hearing from employers to make sure that you're investing in the jobs that are going to continue to exist and to grow?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would say is I look at it from, I'm definitely a data person. And so I do want to put in a plug. I'm going to put the link in the chat to the Centers of Excellence, which is a resource of the BACCC, which is looking at labor market data. So I'm always a person to look at the data. So go surf around the data insights. You can subscribe to the email, and that tells you, not from an anecdotal perspective, but from a data perspective, where are the labor demands in the region, which I think is awesome. And I also don't think it's enough. We need to be looking at, we need to be skating towards where the puck is going, not just where the job demands are today. And this is where I am extremely bullish on tech. Like, tech companies have thoroughly survived the pandemic and thrived. And that is just there's a huge talent demand in tech. And as the Pathstream folks articulated well today, and I would bet the JVS folks did too, there's a lot of entry-level positions that need just a bit of training to get into them. And like, that's what Year Up is all about also, right? It's just 6 months of education that gets you into data analyst, project management, IT help desk. And like, I would argue in the marketing realm, like a sort of marketing certificate is going to be huge. Like, online marketing is, again, it doesn't take a huge training lift to get somebody started in an entry-level marketing position. And every company needs a lot of these functions, right? Like, it's not just tech that needs marketing and IT help desk and data analysts. Like, those are roles that are going to be in every single organization very, very soon, if not already. And so I would really encourage folks to be paying a lot of attention to those kind of job roles, and how can we all be partnering to make it accessible for the folks who like maybe don't have the front seat to where the puck is going, right? Like that's our job, is to look at where hiring trends are going. And in the tech sector, like we all need to be doing more to get job seekers retrained and into tech companies, which have proven to be incredibly resilient through this period of time. I will also just call out healthcare. Like I know that there's a ton of demand. I mean, and our healthcare workers have been celebrated as heroes over the past year, which I think is a beautiful thing. And I also know that there's a lot of shortages in the like entry-level roles, dental assisting, optician, medical assisting, CNA. Like these are all roles that I think are like a first step on a ladder that can lead to, you know, progressively higher wages with further sort of on-the-job training. There's a cool apprenticeship program that's been done in the Central Valley. That's a LVN, licensed vocational nurse to RN program in the correctional facilities. So that's sort of an interesting proof of concept of like an upskill program using the mechanism of apprenticeship. But I mean, I'm speaking more just on like general work trends, not so much on apprenticeship, but I think that it's incredibly important for us to be looking at those jobs and getting folks into them. And I think that a lot of the folks in this group can be really unique in addressing is getting the highest need individuals aware of and trained for those roles.
Mm-hmm. DC, I want to invite you in to just build on that question, but also to just mention the areas that you would like to see expanded work-based, like what parts of the sectors of the economy would you like to see expanded, you know, work-based learning opportunities?
Yeah, I definitely want to, before I get to that, acknowledge, you know, our workforce liaisons. That is our staff position that is business facing. They're engaging with employers about their needs and connecting our participants to these opportunities, and just conveying some updates that I got from this team. You know, there's a range of opportunities popping up right now, from Facebook interns to SpaTechs, right, in terms of the need. And I do think it's important in this conversation to lift up the local economy and to lift up the smaller businesses and convey the current experiences that businesses are knocking on our staff's door, right? There has been this trend of our staff pounding the pavement, trying to convince employers to create opportunities for participants. And there is a bit of businesses are reaching out for support in this pandemic in terms of the recovery needs, looking for support, not just with staffing, but connection, right? So the same way that we talk about the digital divide for participants and access seekers, some of our employers and businesses are experiencing a digital divide. Maybe their industry is not historically rooted in tech, but right now in this remote reality, they have to have systems in place to receive applications and to do interviews. And so just kind of this underlying need is being lifted in terms of this process, even for those industries that are not traditionally considered, you know, tech reliant, if you will, or digital reliant. So I'll lift that up. And in terms of industries or fields for these opportunities, I think a lot of times the participants that we work with, again, are in an exploratory stage, or they have concepts that they've have concepts around what a good job is, concepts around a good job. Sometimes that's government, sometimes that's big company, sometimes that's labor union, construction. These are opportunities that many of our participants come to us with interest in, or have perceived barriers around access, right? Someone said earlier, it's kind of who has access to the opportunities. It's not what you know, who you know, right? And so definitely opportunities to broaden the gate to union jobs, to jobs in government systems that have ladders for mobility and stability and benefits and retirement. So all of these things that, again, kind of compete with that immediate need that many of our participants are coming through the door with. So I would say definitely construction. I also lift up medical, and I'm gonna lift up medical for a reason. Medical is a field that many of our participants have interest in and do have experience with caregiving, right? And are looking for a pathway between caregiving to nursing or medical assisting, and often perceive barriers such as math and science or courses that might keep them out of that career trajectory. So I think apprenticeships that bridge the gap between caregiving and nursing would be great.
Oh, that is great. I just want to, Adele, you just unmuted. So do you want to build on that in terms of your wish list for expanded opportunities? And then we'll go to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that's a great one. And one thing that I just wanted to put out there is that, so I'm relatively new in my role. I'm only 6 months into this newly created position. And one of the first things I tried to do was to assess, like, what are the apprenticeship programs that are already available through our community colleges. And I have attempted to put this together in this little website. So I won't go through all of the programs in Contra Costa and Alameda, but there are a bunch. And I think DC also just called out a really important pathway, which is into the trades. And the trades really have done an incredible job. I mean, they're where apprenticeship sort of originated. And a lot of our community colleges, and I'll also call out the adult ed. I know Martinez Adult Ed does a bunch with apprenticeships, and I know they're doing not just building trades ones, which they are, but also they have a new program in optician, which I think is so cool. And so there are a bunch of programs out there that I would encourage you use this as a resource to offer to folks who are looking for an apprenticeship pathway. And I'm hoping that there are, over time, lots more programs in there, but we definitely are seeing some cool initial efforts to create apprenticeship programs in areas like medical assisting, optician, dental assisting, and also in the tech space of cybersecurity and IT help desk. And some of the tech ones, I know Merritt College is working with an entity called Right Varsity, which is doing a bunch around tech-related apprenticeships. There's an interesting tech health coder apprenticeship program, which straddles the tech and the health realm. But there are some that already exist, so I encourage you to check those out as a sort of set of the menu options for folks that are coming your direction to consider. And I would be very happy to connect with others who are interested in, like, developing new ones. And it does start with employer demand. Like, an apprenticeship program is not a certificate. It's not a training program. It is a job. It's a particular job category that is an entry level with on-the-job training and classroom education, but it is fundamentally a job. And so it does need to start with the employer demand. And so that is step one, but I am very open and happy to be a partner to anybody who's interested in exploring this subject and maybe has a group of employers that are really banging on the door for a certain role, and would be interested in sort of partnering to get people into that pathway quicker and be learning on the job while they're working.
Great, thanks, Adele. And then just Regina, bringing you into the conversation. I know it's always hard to be third of three on a panel, but in terms of, thinking about, where we should go and in terms of expanding opportunity, because with your, and feel free to talk a little bit brag about Elena, but like, you have a sense of what, what the learners at all levels are looking for. And so, if you could comment about where you'd like to see expansion, that'd be great.
Sure. And I dropped a link in the chat to where I think we always need to start early and often with career exploration. And there's a free quiz on Gladio's site that I've encouraged my kids to take, and I want everyone to take. And it kind of leads you into exploring different careers based on your personality and your interests. And so I love that. I think everyone needs to do that. I decided what I was, going to be in second grade, and then thought I needed to stick to that, right? Like, these are the two options because these are what my parents do. And I literally did the same thing that like my grandparents did. And so because I didn't have a lot of exposure. So I think that that it starts with that. What are you really interested in? And then what I tell my kids is, we live in the Bay Area. It's really expensive to live here. So if you want to go into an industry that does not pay a living wage, you need to really think about that, and let's do the math. Travis Credit Union has some great resources about what it takes to live, what it costs, to live in the Bay Area. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration too. And like Adele and DC said, with the trades, I think all of us need to be leading by example, talking about, if you take this path, you won't have student loans, you will have a living wage, and it's an awesome career. It's not, I think that there's some marketing that we all need to lead by example. I say all the time, my daughter is a third-year student at DVC, and I couldn't be more proud of her. Put that bumper sticker on my car. And my son wants to be a carpenter. Awesome. Like, let's brag about that stuff. That's amazing. And leading by example and using the local resources that are available and accessible to everyone, and not having them be seen as like, oh, they didn't get into college, so they're going to be a carpenter. That's my son's first choice, and I couldn't be more excited about it and proud of him. So I'm not sure that really answered your question, but I also think that employers have a huge role to play in advocacy. We all, as intermediaries and teachers and case managers, want to cream naturally, because we want to show the employers, look at these students who are prepared and ready. But employers don't necessarily want that. We see manufacturing day where it's all the engineering students that get that opportunity to go on a field trip to CNH Sugar or Bishop Weiscarver. But when you really talk to them, they're looking for machinists. And that's not necessarily the path that these engineering students are taking. So I think really listening to employers and resisting the urge to cream and cherry pick the best and the brightest that we showcase to our employers, because employers are really wanting a diverse and local talent pool. And I would just say Elena focuses on all those industries, sectors that provide a living wage or a pathway to a living wage. Mm-hmm. And it's one place where employers can go and pledge opportunities, and they are available to the region. We have people matching themselves to those opportunities. We have over 200 connectors in the region. Elena, our Salesforce platform that tracks, measures, and coordinates work-based learning, provided over 100,000 placements for people last year. So it is possible to scale work-based learning and to provide that for everyone if we coordinate ourselves and create technology tools like Salesforce platforms that are making it easy on both ends. The teachers, the faculty, case managers, and employers have somewhere to go that does all the heavy lifting for them.
Well, just building on that, to stick with you for a minute, Gina, just about on the subject of what I would just like you to elaborate a little bit about what employers, how employers can best support work-based learning. Are there best practices you have seen or can point to? You talked about like getting employers to make those pledges, and you've talked about the value of listening to employers. But what would you say to that point of how employers can best support work-based learning, and what are the best practices?
So we piloted something during this pandemic we love Manufacturing Day, but we didn't want to skip it this year. So we decided to do a manufacturing week in Contra Costa County, where we asked employers, hey, can someone come into your plant with a GoPro? Can we do tours? Can you do a panel? Can you be a guest speaker and showcase your profession, your career, talk about, we also looked for, talent within the organization that was reflective of the people we're serving. And so we did 5 events a day, which was a lot, which included tours of companies that were actively hiring. And then we took students virtually to the community college that offered a short-term industry recognized certificate for that job. So I loved that. It was really powerful. And we were able to have thousands of people engaged because it was virtual. We had teachers at Juvenile Hall live streaming these events. So that was pretty powerful. And we've been asked to do that again for Santa Clara County and to do different sectors. We're doing media and digital arts showcasing, because colleges are using this as an opportunity to recruit students. And then not just manufacturers, but employers are using this as an opportunity to recruit their future employees. So it's just a win-win for everyone. So we're hoping to scale that across the whole region, where employers, and we had regional directors help us with that. You know, Mark Martin with manufacturing helped us do the outreach to the employers. He facilitated a panel. We'll have Adele help us when we do apprenticeships, but connecting with people that are already doing this work too, so we're not reinventing, and then opening up these opportunities to all the workforce and WIOA and providers so that their clients on their caseloads can participate as well. So
great. Well, I'm going to invite DC in to build on that. Then what are the best practices and how can employers do better in this space?
Oh, I feel like we've kind of skipped around a topic that we haven't made explicit, which is racial justice. And so when I get excited about the opportunities that I'm hearing described in the wins, which are absolutely wins. And I know that we as an organization are gearing up to have difficult conversations with employers and shifting the narrative that a successful placement or a successful partnership is not solely measured by how many participants you place or what the wage is, right? Really engaging in the conversation around equitable access and mobility, right? How are participants doing once they get there? And I feel like that is just as an important conversation that we have had, but are definitely gearing up to have more intently and more regularly. Like this has to be part of our regular mainstream conversation and how we evaluate success. Right. And so I just wanted to add that because I think that we've all referenced it today, but it's not an implicit issue. It's definitely an explicit issue to make sure that we're talking about our communities who are historically disenfranchised to have access to mobility, not just get a job, but mobility and retention and the fair wages. So that's what I would say is that those are conversations that we have to engage business partners in, and it's not going to be easy because it's not going to be immediately connected to their bottom line. There are many businesses that are doing just fine. Their bottom line, their profit margins are huge, and they haven't had to address this value. And so I think for us, that's the hill that we've committed to climb with our business partners.
That's great. And I will tell you, right, I'm going to be zooming over to go to this other event that Keith Archuleta is hosting around Policy Link's new report about advancing equity in the workplace that really shows the serious disparities along racial lines that have consequences about wages. And to your point, DC, earlier about, what is a good job? Well, like in talking about stable income with benefits that can support a family, those are not equally distributed among our, right? And I think, so I would say just to kind of take off my moderator hat and just add my 2 cents in working with employers are hungry for doing better in this space. And as they learn how badly it's what the current situation is, I have been, even when conversations can get uncomfortable, I know that our employers are learning a lot and want to be engaged in the conversation. As we have launched our own racial justice policy framework and things like that. And so, but it takes intention and it takes persistence. And so I'm really glad that you raised that as an issue. But so Adele, wanted to just invite you into the conversation around employers doing better and helping with racial justice or anything else in terms of how employers can be better at supporting workplace.
Yeah, and DC, thank you so much for really explicitly bringing that into the conversation, because I think it's incredibly important. And to be honest, I think one of the quickest things an employer could do would be to commit to never having an unpaid internship ever again, and replacing it with either stipended internships or even better, apprenticeships. And I really like apprenticeships. It's really a subsidized talent development strategy is really what apprenticeships is, because it's going, and that is 100% true in the state of California, where the training portion, the classroom training portion of an apprenticeship is completely covered by the state of California. And thanks to WIOA funds, often for those like low income and underrepresented folks, often there are wraparound services that also get covered cost-wise. And so I think that the mechanism of apprenticeship, I think, is something that a lot of employers should be considering for any and all entry-level positions into their organizations. And I think it has the added benefit, not only is the sort of training portion essentially subsidized, but it creates a dialogue between employers and training entities, whether it be a community college, which I will say there's lots of community colleges that are working in this world of apprenticeship. And I just want to call out Chabot Las Positas is one of the like major players in the region of the world that we're talking about. I know it's not Contra Costa, but it's in that East Bay region that is doing a ton with apprenticeships. And so there's a lot of great partners in community colleges. I already mentioned the adult eds, and it's getting employers' voice and the needs of an employer into our education system, which not only will train the apprentice directly, but will have the sort of ripple effects that more folks in the community colleges will be getting instruction that is relevant to that industry or career that is in high demand. And so I think that there is the equity. I agree with you, Kristen, that there's a lot of companies that are interested in doing more around racial justice. And like that is the quickest advice I can offer is to declare never to do an unpaid internship ever again. Because I have been guilty of this in my career of running unpaid internships, and I'm deeply ashamed of ever having done it because I've realized just how much of a mechanism of perpetuated privilege the unpaid internship is. And I really think that apprenticeship offers a different and better and far more equitable mechanism. And I would also just argue that companies are not doing okay. Homogenous companies that don't have diversity are in a worse position than their competitors that do have diversity. Like for as guilty as I've been of the unpaid internship, I have forever been somebody to say like, no, diversity is a competitive advantage in any industry that you are in, because the community of clients that you are serving are diverse. And if you don't have those perspectives represented in your organization, you have blind spots, and that's costing you money. And so I'm just like, I will scream that from any rooftop because I think it is very, very true. And luckily, I think a lot of folks in the business community, tech community are waking up to that. And I think it's really great. And
if I could just get you to follow up, Adele, just on that point about employers getting their perspectives into the education system, just sort of, it can be very daunting to an employer to be like, what's the right level? How do I get that input in? I mean, obviously, like as someone who represents employers and works in this space, like I know how to navigate that. But if I'm just an employer listening in right now, what's the right entry point and how would I go about doing that? Just say a little bit more about that.
About like just generally or for apprenticeship?
Well, about how to influence, right? Because if the fundamental question is how can employers be better at providing work-based learning, and you were suggesting that it's important that employers' perspectives be heard by the education community. At what level? Is an employer talking to the K-12 system? Are they talking to community colleges? Are they talking to the Cal State system? Where's the access point? What would you recommend? And I'm happy to have Gina and DC's perspective about how employers best get that input, besides, being active in our various organizations. But what would you say?
Absolutely. So this is where the organization that I am a part of, the Bay Area Community College Consortium, is really helpful because we have regional directors Now, I'm a little bit strange because I'm a regional director of apprenticeship, which is like a particular program type. But as Gina mentioned earlier, there are regional directors of industry verticals. So Mark Martin is the regional director of manufacturing, advanced manufacturing. We also have a regional director of health, others of IT. So I know I put a website in earlier, but I would encourage you to reach out to your regional director because they can help you be kind of a navigator to interacting with the education system. I know it's called the Community College Consortium, but really we work with kind of this full spectrum of public education, from adult ed and ROPs to the K-12 system. And so I think that these regional directors can be helpful navigators in thinking about that. So that's like one first step, but I will also say that just being extra mindful of the pathways into your organization is going to be like such a critical component of how an organization addresses racial justice. Like that pathway in is so critical. And really doing everything you can to diversify that pathway in is really valuable. And I happen to be a believer of the apprenticeship mechanism, and I'm absolutely happy to talk to any employer who's even mildly intrigued by anything I've said today. I am definitely working with a bunch of different employers on considering apprenticeship and how to put it together in partnership with a community college or adult ed, and hopefully also a workforce development board to kind of create that whole person support mechanism that turns it into a truly equitable pathway.
That's great. I want to go ahead, DC.
I want to add, to jump onto that, there was something that came up in the breakout group about employers and or companies not being trainers, right? So when we think about adult learning and the need for these host sites or these partners in work-based learning to have the supports that they need to create the learning environment at the workplace is a key component, which I'm sure many of the systems are addressing, but I want to call that out explicitly because in the absence of that, we have the job seekers experience is I've got it over there and I got fired or I got released because, maybe the learning needs weren't addressed or maybe there wasn't communication or feedback. Like structures need to be in place for frequent and clear feedback on how someone is doing and moving through their training experience. And in my experience, sometimes that's missing in some of our partnerships in terms of on-the-job training. I'll just lift that up as one of the strategies that we use. So there's a thin line between a job and an on-the-job training. And there are some key components that need to be present for the on-the-job training to be successful. And part of that is having some sense of adult learning, right? In a supervisor's role in supporting learning on the job, as well as I think the structure around feedback and evaluation and taking the sting out of that. Having to be able to give feedback to how someone is progressing or not progressing is critical in these learning environments.
Thank you. Gina, you put something in the chat. Do you want to just say a word about what that does? Because our time is short. So I'm going to basically just kind of be calling on you guys to sort of wrap things up. But
sure.
But would love to have you mention that.
I think it's important that we say these things out loud, that systems have been set up with, structural and systemic racism, ableism, sexism. We have to say these things out loud, and then our actions, we need to follow up with our actions. We need to take a hard look at ourselves. That's what, Earn and Learn has had to do too. Elena, which is a tech tool, was built by a Black woman. A Black woman in tech is less than 1%. I mean, it's very, very important that when that happens, we talk about it. And then we also, all of our work, all of our tech, outsourced tech, we are contracting with Black tech companies. Our boards need to be reflective of the community. We need to talk about it and be open about it. And I love this report because it's called Unpacking the Work of Work-Based Learning. And it calls out, how to prepare young people to deal with racism at work. How do you prepare young people for that? You can't ignore it. Many of you that know me personally know that my kids are Mexican. Their dad was a farm worker. I sometimes have not had those conversations because I want to have my head in the sand about it. And then they experience it in the workplace. And my son got a job at a golf course and they immediately put him in the kitchen as a dishwasher. That's not what he wanted to do. They didn't ask him. All his white friends were driving golf carts. So he came home and said, Mom, why? And so we have to have those difficult conversations with teachers, with faculty. We've embedded a training. We're working now with 7 community colleges. And the second onboarding training that we do is called Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And it's who are you leaving out of work-based learning? And what Adele said, the data is so important because it tells us who's getting these opportunities and who is not. And then we unpack the data and say, we know why, but what are we going to do about it? And holding ourselves accountable with data is really important, and holding employers accountable. My favorite conversation with tech companies is, oh, I read this report and you have 1% of the people working in technology at your company, less than 1% are Black. What's your plan for that? So I think holding employers accountable, holding our education institutions accountable, holding ourselves accountable for that is like a really, really important step.
Thank you, Gina. Adele, I'm going to give you a minute just to say something, and then DC, you're going to get the last word.
Okay. One other thing that I just wanted to mention, as employers are thinking about how to sort of influence what gets taught and like what folks are learning in order to prepare them for work, faculty and educators more broadly, like we need to be helping our educators along and also understanding the incredible role of influence they have in a young or just in a person's life whenever they are interacting with that person. And so I think, I mentioned earlier about being in touch with regional directors. One of the things that's been happening in community colleges is creating communities of practice around certain sector groups that are bringing together the faculty mostly around a certain subject area, which I think is really awesome that this is happening. And that's a moment to be influencing and informing educators who are excited to be learning about, hey, like, what do employers need? Or also, like, I'm thrilled to hear about the racial justice and diversity, equity, and inclusion work that I think is also happening in many of those forums, because at the end of the day, it is the instructor, the faculty member, the teacher who is in front of those classrooms and has the deepest relationship with those learners. And I think that to the extent that we can support those folks in advancing their own knowledge and perspectives around the opportunities and how they offer opportunities to their different students, right? Like, that's also really, really important. And so I think that's just an incredibly valuable role to consider when trying to change outcomes, whether it be in what is being trained or how it's being trained.
Great point. So DC, you started off our conversation about the importance of clarity and meeting the immediate income needs of folks and having it be connected to a long-term prospect. So I'm going to give you the last word on our panel today.
And I know we're short on time, and I think I said this earlier, like I'm contradicting myself, but I think my final comment is really around emphasizing exposure, exploration, and choice, and more so than how many placements did you complete? How many internships or training experiences did you complete? I think that's going to be critical for the CBOs who are positioned to presenting these opportunities, right? Or how we just in our systems, how we determine who are we going to apply for, we owe a funding for, how we, because all of that is tied, right? And all of that is based in the assumption of who's likely to complete. Whether we admit it or not, there's bias embedded in how we determine who's going to be enrolled in a program and who has the likelihood of completing. And so I think it's critical in terms of increasing access that we really do increase the narrative around exploratory exposure to training and career opportunities.
Okay, great. Exploration, exposure, and choice. Very profound words. Ladies and gentlemen who've been here participating, please join me in, you can use your reaction buttons to applaud. I know I am just going to just be actually clapping. And I have just pages and pages of notes and so much to think about. Just really want to thank Adele, Gina, and DC for being on our panel. I want to thank the 3 organizations for this morning. Again, this was recorded. We'll share it on our website. We'll share presentations on our website, and the work continues. The Equitable Economic Recovery Task Force will continue to meet through June of 2021, and then hopefully beyond. We can figure out how to get in keep the work funded and keep it moving forward. There's just so much work to do together. So I want to thank EHSD and Workforce Development Board, and have a wonderful day. Thanks, everybody.